this weekend, not just the G7, but Australia, India, South Africa and South Korea, who have joined us, and I should say in India's case, joined us virtually, and not just our resolve to tackle climate change, but also our democratic values. What we as the G7 need to do is demonstrate the benefits of democracy and freedom and human rights to the rest of the world. About Brexit, actually, I can tell you that the vast majority of the conversations that we've had over the last 3 or 4 days have been about other subjects, and there has been a fantastic degree of harmony. I mean, you know, I don't think that really I could have asked for a more cooperative or a more energetic spirit from our friends. What I'm saying is that well, we will do whatever it takes to protect the territorial integrity of the UK, but actually what happened at this summit was that there was a colossal amount of work on subjects that had absolutely nothing to do with Brexit. And
you would say that climate change is the most serious issue facing the world, but there doesn't appear to be a collective agreement yet on a binding timetable for concrete actions on issues. And finally, did you have an opportunity to explain to President Macron that Northern Ireland is as much part of the United Kingdom as Toulouse is part of France?
Okay, well, on the last point, I just repeat what I said to Beth. Of course, we make the point continuously that we're all part of one great, indivisible United Kingdom, and it's the job of the UK government to uphold that, as you'd expect. And on your point about the vaccines. You talked about a moral failure to supply more than. I really must reject this. This is another billion made up of a massive contribution by the United States, other friends, the UK putting in another 100. Look, I think the G7 have made great commitments on climate change. I mentioned phasing out coal. They're also agreeing to stop the support, the subsidy of coal mining around the world, because we, as the rich nations of the earth, we need to build our credibility with those countries in asking them to make cuts in CO2, because this country, which started the Industrial Revolution, is responsible for a huge budget of carbon that's already in the atmosphere. We're now asking other countries to make a change. That's why this government put 11.6 billion into climate finance. And at this G7 summit, actually, you saw many other countries stepping up to the plate and making very big, and the EU making very big commitments.
Were you offended by President Macron's comments in your meeting yesterday about Northern Ireland's place in the UK?
Thanks very much, Laura, for inviting me to answer that question for the third time. But what I will say is that I think it's the job of the government of the United Kingdom to uphold the territorial integrity of the United Kingdom. On the general criticism of the summit that you relay from sources unknown, I mean, $2.5 billion pledged for girls' education already. That's not half bad. That's not half bad. Every country is...
Thank you, Prime Minister. You said last year that pangolin scales being used in demented Chinese medicine may be in the cause of COVID. Is that still your view? And what have you learnt this week from fellow world leaders about the lab leak theory? And do you agree with Dominic Raab, who said this morning he doesn't believe it?
On pangolins, I do think there's a problem with zoonotic diseases, and this is clearly the thing we have to focus on. And it's the practice that seems to be particularly prevalent in some parts of Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, of farming wild animals. That is really where the risks are. At the G7 was that, well, as you know, we're having a new treaty on pandemic preparedness and to make sure the world works better in the future in tackling zoonotic diseases like this, and indeed all types of disease. And one of the things that we agreed to do was to strengthen the World Health Organization.
The administration of suspicion about the Johnson government and a belief that you are more ideologically in tune with Donald Trump than you would be with Joe Biden.
Over the last few years, let's be absolutely clear, it is the job of all prime ministers, everybody who does my job, to have close relations, a close working relationship with the President of the United States. And I think when it comes to building back better for the world and making sure that we build back greener together, I think that we're totally on the same page, and it's been very, very refreshing and very interesting to listen to him. And you had some other point about Yates. With greatest respect to all our friends around the world, this is something that I think we're going to fix. We'll fix it in a pragmatic way, but this is about making sure that we protect the Good Friday peace process and the territorial integrity of the UK, and that's what we're going to do. Okay, Ben Riley-Smith of The Telegraph.
Thank you for watching this issue. So can you offer a guarantee that ultimately full reopening will not be delayed longer than 4 weeks? And what is your message to businesses and people who may consider breaking the rules if there is a delay? And on vaccines, there is a simple way to try and boost world supply, dropping the patents on COVID vaccines. Why don't you support that?
The best thing is to get all this out in one package so that everybody can understand it in the round, and that's what we'll be doing tomorrow, as I've said repeatedly. And on your point about TRIPS and intellectual property and that route, look, I think that the crucial thing is to make sure that we build up capacity, build up manufacturing capacity, fill and finish and manufacturing around the world, particularly in Africa. I think we should be sharing knowledge as much as we can, whilst obviously protecting as I think Dr. Ngozi of the WTO well put it, protecting the incentives for innovation. So you've got to accomplish both things at once.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Antonello. There's obviously a very close and indeed special relationship between Italy and the UK. Yes, sorry. On the Indo-Pacific region, well, the answer is I think very simple, which is that this is the area of the world where in the next 20, 30 years, you're going to see the most dynamic economic growth, where you're going to see the bulk of the of middle classes rising, and where obviously there are some tensions at the moment that we think can be, how shall I put it, allayed, tensions that can be allayed by proper observance of the rules-based international system in which we believe, and the UK, together with other partners in the G7, including Italy, is determined to do that.
That $100 billion a year you mentioned was a pledge the G7 first made more than a decade ago at the Copenhagen summit. And alongside that, we had this promise to develop a plan for a new climate funding mechanism, but there were no details of how or when that might happen. With just a few months to go until COP26, won't developing countries conclude the G7 isn't serious about tackling the climate crisis? And on vaccines, we're obviously a very long way short of the 11 billion doses that Dr. Tedros of the WHO thinks we need to vaccinate 70% of the population before next year's G7 summit. I wonder whether you think the UK's aid cuts left you without the moral authority to be able to bring other countries on board this weekend.
Thanks very much, Heather. Well, on the first point about the 100 billion, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's a lot of money still to raise, but don't forget the UK has put in 11.6 billion, as you know. We had big pledge from Canada. We've had big pledges around the table. I do think that we can get there, and I think it's vital that we do. Why should somebody in the developing world, believe that they have to make some change in their technology to cut CO2, unless when so much of the CO2 has been emitted in previous decades by us in the richer countries, and we've got to make that commitment, and that's the logic of it. And on your point about, as I said to Robert, has given 1.6 billion to Gavi, 548 million to COVAX, and $500 million vaccines that are being distributed around the world are getting jabs. Those jabs are going into people's arms as a direct result. I think you've got to look at the results. And actually, I'll tell you something. The point you just raised with me has not been raised by anybody else. With me, any other international leader, let alone the leader of a recipient country, and because they know that the UK is one of the biggest donors in the world.